Megan and Matt Bormet, thanks for letting me interview you for the Business of Publishing. Tell us a little bit about your partnership and how you came to found a bookstore in Takoma Park, Maryland.
I am a former elementary school teacher. I started my career as a third grade teacher and then a reading coach, and I love this idea of finding the right book for the right kid at the right time. That was my favorite part of the job. I did that for 15 years. And then I'd like to say that this was a lifelong dream and we've always wanted to open a bookstore and we've been working really hard, but that's not true. We moved to Takoma Park in 2020 and we felt a little bit duped that there was no bookstore to walk to. So what started as a joke, like what if we open a bookstore, and kind of started this snowball going of let's join the American Booksellers Association, let's talk to other bookstore owners, let's see if we could really make this happen, and here we are.
Anything to add?
No, I'd say the other part of the partnership is Megan and I met on OkCupid in 2000 something.
Okay.
So, big shout out. The last time we ever used an algorithm was OkCupid.
That's true.
But I've been in DC for 23 years. I'm a 2006 graduate with a master's degree in the philosophy and social policy program at GW, which was great. And I went to AU before that. And so we've been kind of in DC and came to Takoma Park as a walkable, livable place where we could also have a yard and our kids could run around a house and we could have some space. And it's sort of hippy-dippiness. And the location of Takoma Park, I just want to emphasize, is very important to why this bookstore here is the specific part. This bookstore doesn't work other places if we don't live there.
So for those that aren't familiar with the area, describe Takoma Park a little bit.
Sure.
I also live here, for full disclosure.
I think long tradition of left-leaning politics and activism in the city, combined with, frankly, pretty high property values and people with a little bit of money in their pocket that can buy a book without thinking about whether or not they have enough money in their account, along with a really well-educated population in Montgomery County generally. I read a ridiculous statistic that, people of a certain age in Montgomery County, something like 50% of them have a master's degree. And so there's just an opportunity those are people who read a lot, and so the demographics work perfectly for a bookstore. I think also that changes sort of the inventory and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that we live here is also a big part, that people feel like they're shopping with their neighbor rather than from a big chain or a faceless one.
Let's talk a little bit about mission. We talked a lot about mission in this class and others too. How would you describe your mission and describe a little bit how that evolved?
Maybe talking about the name People's Book can help a little bit to describe our vision. Takoma Park is very endearingly known as the People's Republic of Takoma Park because of its left-leaning, very progressive politics. So it's a little bit of a nod to the People's Republic, also a nod to People's Drug. People's Drug was a kind of old mom and pop type neon sign, soda pop shop drugstore, and we really like the vibe of that. But I think in terms of mission, Matt said earlier, we're all in on Takoma Park. This bookstore would not work if you picked it up and put it in another location. We're in on local authors, we're in on the people part, events. We want people to come in the store. We have 12 book clubs happening. We want the people to have a space to gather. So I think the people part of People's Book is really important, and really important that we live here. So we know our community because we are part of our community.
And every time I've been in here, it's been crowded. So and just so everybody knows, this new you opened 6 months ago?
We opened on June 27th, so about 5 months ago.
Okay. Yep. Just post pandemic. So what are some of the key challenges faced by a bookseller such as People's Books?
We could name a lot, probably.
Do you want us just complain about owning a business?
I think one of the when we were writing our business plan, People's Book, this area checks a lot of boxes. But one of the boxes it does not check is a bookstore really needs good foot traffic. You see a lot of bookstores with beautiful displays in the window and people walk by and they weren't necessarily shopping for a book, but they're drawn in by your displays. And we're kind of tucked around a corner, and so we don't have that natural foot traffic. So we've had to really invest heavily in marketing and social media and getting the word out in other ways so that people, like our giant neon sign outside, a lot of our investments have been on just getting the word out so people know that we're here, because they're not going to walk by unless they know to come.
Fortunately, it is in a popular part of town too, old town Takoma. So you open in summer 2023, so we could kind of say that's post-pandemic, maybe not, but how has COVID and the pandemic changed bookselling from your perspective or from what you've heard?
I think a lot of bookstores actually did okay during the pandemic, between PPP loans and EIDL, which are two programs the government put in place. A lot of people stayed afloat, and
a lot of people started and kept reading during the pandemic.
I think also I think a lot of people were like us, sitting around during the pandemic going, what if we whatever, because they're both, it's a married couple sitting at the kitchen table together. My understanding is that bookstores are actually on the rise through the pandemic. I think the challenge will be, there was perhaps an artificial bump of goodwill of your neighbors want to support you during the pandemic. You can only get that goodwill for so long before people go back to, deciding on cost, particularly as inflation goes up. People feel pressured economically, and so they may not decide to spend the extra 10-15% they have to spend here versus online. And I think that's, again, why the key to our success, and I think the key for booksellers generally, is make sure that you have reasons for people to come in the store that isn't because I wanted to go buy a book there. It's because I wanted to come to the zine workshop with my kid, or I wanted to see Mr. Gabe in the parking lot play kids' songs, or I wanted to come to the book event on the Bill Gates question. So we'll be on C-SPAN for the Bill Gates problem this weekend, which is pretty exciting.
C-SPAN came here?
Book TV came here.
That's cool.
Which is totally rad. For an Old Hill staffer.
That's great.
Was very exciting for me.
I think post-pandemic, people are really, really looking for a chance to gather and be together with people in the real world outside of the walls of their house. And so that's really informed our priorities for the first 6 months, and we keep reminding each other our priorities for the first year is just get people in the door. We've had 72 events in the last 5 months, and that doesn't include any of our book clubs, which happen 12 times a month. So we just are constantly giving people a reason to come in the store. And that's kind of the people's part of People's Book. We want people to be able to come in and have conversations in a space that's not their kitchen table.
And that's actually a thing we learned, I think, based on the events thing and getting people in the door. We were open sort of till 6 o'clock Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and closed on Mondays. And 2 weeks ago, we pulled the trigger on being open 7 days a week, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m. to just be a open space that people always know we're gonna be open. They don't have to think about, hey, is it Tuesday? Or whatever. If you're up, we're probably open, and you can come in here on your way to work. You can come in here on your way back. You can come in here after dinner. After you put your kids to bed, we're always, and so being able to be open late also allows us to have events later. So I can do a 6:30 event instead of a 5 o'clock event, and that hopefully does better. So that's one thing we sort of learned is we got to have the space open more. And thus far, I mean, we did it during the holiday season, so who knows? Mileage may vary, but so far it's been successful for us.
I think consistency is good. And like you said, doing events a little later is probably good for people that are working, even if they're working from home. Okay, great. So let's pivot a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about publishers' discounts and maybe how they vary? What's the role of a publisher's discount in your buying decision?
It's huge. It's tremendously huge. I do most of the book buying. Matt does a lot of the zines and graphic novels. So maybe you can talk about that, because that is pretty different actually from traditional publishers, the zines in particular. But I think because we've been thinking about this store and planning it for so long before we opened, we had the luxury of time. Like we were kind of waiting until the right space opened up, and so we were just twiddling our thumbs, like what should we be working on? And so we used that time to set up relationships with publishers early. The advice we got from most bookstores who had opened just told us, go to Ingram, go to a wholesaler, get your new, I think they call it a ROSI,
Recommended opening store
inventory.
Okay.
And they'll put together 10,000 books for you and ship it to you by section, and you can put them on the shelves.
Pre-made section.
And it sounds great, but their discount is 42%. If you set up individual relationships with publishers, especially for opening orders, they can give you up to 50. I think for some of us gave us 55% discount. So when you're talking about 10,000 books, now we have 13,000 books on the shelves. The difference between 42 and 55 is a ton of money. So we spent the time setting up those relationships with publishers, doing individual orders. I think we have about 80 different vendors that we work with right now. I will say it was a pain in the butt to put books on shelves, because they're not shipped by section. Right. It's every individual book. You scan the individual book, you put in the section, and you put it on the shelf. And so that times 10,000 took a lot of time, but we had the luxury of time, and we had a community help. We told people we'd buy them a pizza if they came in and unpacked boxes with us, and people rolled up their sleeves and came and helped us put books on the shelves and scan books. So
that sounds like the fun part.
It actually was a lot of sweat. It was in the middle of the summer.
It was a pain, but in the end,
but again, that money makes
saved
a
us
huge amount of money.
$30,000 or so, which then gave us a cushion when we opened of, hey, if nobody shows up for the first week, we're okay. Or if it was a little slow the first week in November, we're okay, right? And so to just have that kind of not have to worry about, like, are we going to have to take money out to deal with this, or are we going to have to go back to the bank and ask for more? That was a huge deal for us. And Megan worked so hard to get that inventory together.
And I would say the relationship with publishers, the discount is the number one thing that's the reason we did it. But there's been so many other benefits. So having a sales rep for each of the major publishers, they can help me they want to learn about the neighborhood. They can help me curate our selection and our opening inventory. It wasn't out of the box. It was, we are going to want a lot more philosophy than any other bookstore. We're going to want a lot more social justice type books. And so they were able to help curate that list for me. And they're also able to help tell me, like, what's going to be on Oprah's book club list next month. You want to get a bunch of those. What's going to be on, who's going to get reviewed in the New York Times. They can tell you all of those things ahead of time. So I think it helped with our curation. And then we were just on their radar, so they can send us authors for events. We got a ton of events because we have these relationships. And they said, it's a new bookstore. This author is going through DC. They have an opening. Why don't they go to People's Book? So there's been a ton of other benefits to having sales reps, setting up those relationships early. It's been huge for us.
And you mentioned about 80 vendors, maybe close to 80 publishers. What's kind of the break of dealing directly versus indirectly then for
like through a wholesaler versus with publishers? I'd say about 90% of our orders come directly through publishers.
That seems pretty high.
And about 10%. We do all of our special orders through a wholesaler, through Ingram, because they tend to be a little bit faster. So if someone wants, they want a special order a book and they want it in 2 days, we'll get it through Ingram. But if someone wants a book and they don't have a time constraint, we'll get it from the publisher.
And do you ever order anything on a short discount, like from a
very rarely
class,
we did some as part of our opening order. We did buy from a number of university presses. I would love to support university presses more. It's a real pain. It's a real pain because the discount is not great. The shipping is really high. They charge you for credit card fees. Oftentimes, if someone wants to special order a book from a university, we lose money on that book. So I'll do it because we want people to come in and we want to make sure that it's available. But we often break even or lose money on that, and that's really hard.
It's a pain in the butt to just like pay an invoice with
one book on
it.
Sure.
And Megan's got to call them in and talk to a person on the phone and read the thing off. As opposed to, we use Batch for Books, which is a way we pay 3 of our biggest publishers, and I go click, click, click at the start of the month, and it's done.
Yeah, so at the end of the month, it's Matt and I sitting at the counter and just going through 80 publishers and saying, all right, I'm going to pay $14 to University of Chicago. I'm going to pay $15 to Yale University Press. And that takes a lot of time when we could be doing other things. So I wish there was a way for them to kind of work together or ship together. I want to support them, but it's really hard for independent stores to support them.
There are a few distributors. I don't know if you've dealt with Hopkins Fulfillment Service, for example.
We do. We have an account with them and with University of Chicago distribution.
Chicago.
I think we probably order the most from them of any of the kind of conglomerates, but it's tricky. They charge you a lot for shipping. They charge you to use a credit card. It doesn't make it worth it. It's really hard.
One thing that surprises people that don't know publishing, even some of our new students, is the issue of return. It's a practice, as I'm sure you know, that started in the Depression and still goes. So talk about the returns issue in terms of your business model. Did that help you get a bank loan, for example?
100%. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know if it really helped us get a loan, but it was a talking point when we talked to the bank about it. We talked to several banks that effectively half of what you're writing us a loan for here, I can get is working capital, right? Is something I can turn around back into dollars after 2 weeks. It also helps us, frankly, to take risks on books that we don't know whether or not they're going to sell. I think it's good for the industry in that it allows booksellers to take a risk on a book without really taking a risk. It allows me to jump out on a book that I really believe in. So like the new Daniel Close book, Monica, came out. Daniel Close is this comic artist who's just like, I read the arc online and was like, oh, of course it's amazing, it's Daniel Close. And so we ordered like 7 of them.
Even our publishing rep was like, you don't want 7 of them, you're going to sell 2.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if that's right.
So like, but
we're on our 3rd order now.
Yeah, we're just like, because I'm going to go shove it in everyone's hands. And so it allows us to do that and not be like, well, are we going to be out $190 on Daniel Close, and how many of those can I take home with me? So it's I think it's good in a sense. It's obviously great for booksellers. I don't know how well it works out for publishers, particularly small press. It seems dangerous.
It can put a publisher out of business if they're not careful.
Yeah.
But it's the same thing, though. It allows booksellers to order books they might not order. So it works both ways.
Yeah, especially for a brand new bookstore, it allowed us to feel safer. And we really had to do some guesswork about our sections and how big they were.
Yeah.
So we thought we'd have a lot of young adult readers. So we had a pretty big young adult section. We thought we'd have a big, what are some other, I don't even remember.
We thought we were going to sell a lot more history.
History, for instance. And so after the first 3 months, we did a giant inventory and said, what's underselling, what's overperforming. And we found out that our YA section is one of our least performing sections. And so we sent back probably 500 books because we needed to slim it down and make room for sections that were selling. So it allowed us to kind of learn our community and do that while we were still open. So I think we'll do another big round of returns after the holidays and kind of see what's overperforming, what's underperforming.
But generally speaking, I think our goal is that if something hasn't sold in the store after 90 days, it's gone.
Yeah, that's pretty typical.
It's a pain to return, and you do pay return shipping, and so anecdotally, a lot of other booksellers say like, I want to, but I never get around to it. I'm too busy to it. So I think you really got to prioritize the time
for the
to do
book
it.
after 90 days, so that's the kind of key.
Sometimes some publishers have a pretty long window.
Some publishers go longer. Okay.
And generally speaking, they're not trying to tell us no, right? Like we've had a couple items where it's like, hey, I know this is past. We just opened, we're doing inventory, and they're generally like, you send us $10,000 every month. You can have the $13 on this one. So
Okay.
Again, another reason to have the relationships with publishers is they know our story, they trust us, we pay our bills on time. Like we're building that credit with them.
Yeah, I'd say the other thing on direct relationships with publishers is we've got lines of credit now with each of them. And if we were only going to a wholesaler, I'd have one line of credit to draw on as opposed to several different ones. And then when I go to other vendors, I've got several references to say, hey, Hatchet trusts me with $7,500. and Penguin Random House trusts me with 15.
Yeah.
And you should trust me with 15.
Yeah.
So that part is helpful too.
Okay. Do you order anything on an unreturnable basis, or pretty much not?
There's some things that are only on an unreturnable basis. A lot of our calendars,
Okay.
some of our stuffed animals, like we have book-related toys and
Okay.
stuffed animals. A lot of them are unreturnable, so I buy them in smaller quantities.
Okay.
But they also have a much better discount for us. So they're often 55-60% discount. So as long as I'm ordering in small batches and not, we don't really have any storage space here. So what we have is out on the floor.
Okay, yeah, no warehouse.
So I think those are the two things that come to mind for non-returnable. Zines, yeah, do you want to talk about the zine?
Yeah, talk about the
A little bit.
zines.
It's less formal than anything else we do.
Sure.
It's generally speaking, I don't know that I have a returnable basis with anybody in the zine section. The zine section isn't there to like be a money maker.
It is in our top 5 best-selling sections.
I
mean, they are $2 a copy for some of them.
Are those really like hyper-local people, or
Some
they can
are,
be from
some
all
are.
over?
You know, it's been interesting because this is one where I think. Do you mind if I take the credit?
You've done everything with zines. You can take all the credit.
This is just me sort of starting at how do I order a zine, and knowing how to get some certain ones that I've just been reading on my own.
Okay.
But and sending a guy $6 on PayPal that he would.
So you
mail to
were
my
like
house.
a fan, and
Yeah. And growing up, you know, I grew up in Portland, Oregon, and Powell's had a pretty good section. So that's what I remember being excited about when I was 17. The zine section is weird in that a lot of it is somebody walks in after emailing and has 3 copies of something, and I hand them money out of the register, which is not how any of the other ones work.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go to that person and be like, hey man, I need the $6.50 back. It's just not worth either of our time.
Okay.
And so it's really, that section is more designed as, boy, isn't this interesting when you walk in. I didn't expect this. This has stuff I've never seen anywhere else, and I know I'm not going to see anywhere else.
Right.
And then hopefully it'll have new stuff the next time you come through, which is sort of the challenge, is just to constantly refresh it. So
You're not going to find it on that, for example, on that other platform that.
yeah, certainly
Yes.
not.
Unnamed
Or
platform.
honestly, in other local bookstores. Like I'd put our section up against anybody in DC's, and we're probably not where Atomic Books in Baltimore is, but outside of that, you got to go to, between us and Atomic, you got to go to Philly or Richmond to get any of this stuff.
Okay.
So, you know, we're working hard to try to just continue to expand it. The answer is generally yes for anybody who pitches a zine, because, you know, what's the worst that happens? I'm out $7.50 and I gotta have something funny on the shelf. Like, it's just, I really believe in the idea of non-algorithmic human creations, and so I just admire the folks in that world. I also think it's where a lot of the most interesting things are happening.
Do you sell eBooks and audiobooks through the store, and if so, how does that work?
Yeah, we have a partnership with Libro FM, which is kind of the audiobook equivalent of bookshop.org, which we also partner with. So we don't do anything in store in terms of audiobooks, but if you buy an audiobook on Libro FM, which is kind of the counterpart to Amazon's Audible, all of the same functionality, same books, but a percentage of each book sale, if you're supporting people's book, will come to us.
Okay. And you mentioned bookshop.org. I interviewed Andy Hunter for a different course, but tell us a little bit about how you work with bookshop.org.
It's amazing. I
Man
don't know how
up.
everyone doesn't know about bookshop.org yet. It's a counterpart to Amazon. It's kind of a co-op model. So not only do we get a portion of each sale when someone is supporting our store, I think we get 30% of each sale directly to us without doing anything. They handle all of the shipping, the returns, the questions, the customer service, everything. And then it's also a co-op model, so the more bookstores that join, the more profits for everybody. So at the end of the year, or I think even quarterly, they send out checks and they say, we've made this much money, let's split it up between the 500 bookstores that are a part of Bookshop. So we just get a deposit in our bank account every quarter for doing nothing.
Right.
Which is amazing.
On our website. I mean, it's great. They're actually, so on the ebook question, we don't sell ebooks. there is no good way for independent bookstores to sell ebooks anymore.
There used to be with Hummingbird was kind of the bookshop Libro ebook option, and they changed their model to support. You can select a charity to support to give your money to instead of bookstores, which is not a bad thing. It's just not something that supports bookstores anymore.
And so Bookshop, my understanding, is working on an ebook platform, which would be great because we're already there.
Yeah, they said it was coming up by the end of this year. I haven't seen it, but it should soon.
I mean, I think the reason nobody's done it well before is because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's why nobody did Bookshop before either. And so, like, yeah, nothing but nice things to say about those guys.
But Bookshop works with Ingram, so Ingram definitely has ebooks for sure.
Yeah.
Me too.
I'll also say Bookshop has been great for online book fairs. So we've done a fair amount of school partnerships where we have, right now we have a box at the front. We're supporting Piney Branch Elementary School book drive, which is right down the street, 3rd through 5th grade. So people can buy a book in the store, put it in the box, and we'll bring it over to the school. But we also have a separate bookshop page for Piney Branch. So anyone who wants to buy a book, either for the school or for themselves, we donate a portion of our profit to Piney Branch for them to use for their PTA.
Right.
And so Bookshop allows you to kind of have different affiliate pages to support schools, and that's a pretty unique functionality.
And they let you set up registries. I don't know if you know about this. So like a friend of mine set up registry for her family, and so nice people in Manhattan, Emily Katz's family, are buying books off of our page, and then it supports our stuff. So, but it's pretty. I mean, it's
we have a. And I'll get to this in a bit, but we have a publishing book club, and I have you guys as our a
Awesome. Thank you.
Health and sustainability of bookstores is really key, I think, to the health and sustainability of publishing, particularly trade publishing. What are some other ways that you work with publishers or that publishers can help support bookstores like yours?
Sure. The promotional stuff helps every now and then. So like Fourth Wing is the big book this year. They had a sequel come out, Iron Flame. We've got 15 copies sitting on the front table. They sent us a bunch of dragons to put up everywhere. So stuff like that helps to just kind of promote specific stuff. Co-op is a big deal for us. It pays for our bookmarks as well as for our newsletter. So we have a paper newsletter that we go to the post office and drop off 2,000 or so copies every other month or so. And that goes out to everybody in Takoma Park. Hopefully you've gotten one in the mail. If
I have not. I'll have to make sure.
It might not be on the specific street. I think we chose in a certain radius from the store.
Also, I feel like you usually get something in the mail and you go, an advertisement. But generally it's another way of us to get our sort of marketing out.
Like we have a word search in there. If you complete the word search and bring it in, you are entered into a raffle for a gift card. So like another reason to get people a reason to come into the store. So back to what we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
And so, but that gets paid for. A lot of it gets paid for with co-op dollars, which is big for us, right? What else?
So that's like $1,000 per newsletter that we're not paying for, that the publishers are paying for because they get to publicize their books in the newsletter.
And does that ties into events too, right? The co-op?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about how you deal with publishers. They let you know an author's going to be in town, or sometimes you get and contact the publisher. I guess it works both ways.
It's a little bit of both. Yeah, Edelweiss, we use Edelweiss to do a lot of our ordering, and many publishers, the major publishers, put up event grids. And so they say, for Penguin Random House, here are all the adult authors that are coming on tour in spring of 2024. It's usually a list of 500 books. And so you look through them and you see where's their hometown, where are they going on tour. So if it's someone that's local or it's someone who has DC on the tour, you write a little paragraph and a pitch about why they should come to your store, how many people you think you're going to get, how many books you think you're going to sell. And you put in a request. And so I'd say about maybe 30 or 40% of our events come through people following up on those event grids. Hey Megan, I saw you requested this author. Do you have any time in February? Let's book an event. Some events are local authors that come in to us. We try to prioritize authors that have relationships with publishers because we're trying to build that credibility. We're also trying to make sure that it's a book that we know will sell. It's riskier to take a chance on a self-published author. so we have a lot of, but it also means that they will bring their friends and family in. So it's kind of, if they're going to bring their friends and family in, that means good sales for us probably. So I think a mix of local authors, event grids, and sometimes there's just a book that one of us really likes, and we just reach out directly to the publisher or to the publicist if we know them and say, hey, I love your book. I send a lot of DMs on Instagram. Hey, I love your book. We're a new bookstore. Do you want to come? And sometimes they just say, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it.
So like Daniel Tutt, who's a professor at GW, has a new book in January on Nisha and the left. I'm just eating it up, right? And so, I reached out, and so he's coming in the week the book comes out. So that kind of thing is like super fun as a bookstore owner to be like, hi, I'm interested in your work. Can't come talk about it, right? Like it's very cool to be able to have a space and invite people, and when they say yes, it's a nice thing.
Yeah, and I happen to be, I think I mentioned to you, Matt, I'm chair of the Takoma Park Arts and Humanities Commission, and I know Taylor, who's our poet laureate for Takoma Park, he's been doing poetry readings.
Yeah, that's been fantastic. Every Sunday. We just had the last one in the series this past Sunday, but that draws in probably between 20 and 50 people every the first Sunday of every month. And they brought in some really fantastic people. Clint Smith was here for one of them. He drew a really big crowd. His stuff is amazing.
Can you talk a little bit about book clubs? Because I know that's a big part of your store too. And I mentioned we have a publishing book club, and maybe we could do something together.
We'd love to host you here if you wanted to have an in-person component. It started before we even opened. I think I sent out a Instagram message. It's like, does anyone want to have a book club in Takoma Park? I was hoping we could have one or two facilitators, and the response was incredible. I think everyone in Takoma Park wants to lead a book club. So I don't really say no. I think the only requirement is you have to guarantee at least 2 or 3 people come in. Like you have to have a friend or a mom or someone that wants to come in. It can't just be you. All the marketing can't be just on us.
Okay, yeah.
But if you can get 2 or 3 people to come, then by all means use this space. So we have 12 book clubs that happen. They're kind of genre based. So we have a nonfiction book club, a literary fiction book club, a graphic novel book club. My favorite one right now is our middle grade book club, run by Sarah, a 4th grade teacher, and she probably gets 10 to 12 10-year-olds to come and eat snacks. They might like the snacks more than the book, but they eat the snacks and they talk about a new book every month, and then their parents get to browse the store for an hour. So that's one of our most successful book clubs.
It's also just nice. In terms of mission, right? Like for us, children reading in the store is just nice. Yeah, we've got a couple of little nooks in the back where kids sit and can read. It's always delightful to walk in the store and see somebody using that. Like that's just, wow, we made this, and people are there. So that's really cool.
And you mentioned earlier how your own children are so proud to.
Yeah, so we have a 2 and a 4-year-old, and they love to come in and work. They have jobs. The magnets right here are organized by my son, my 4-year-old. So he loves to grab a rag and a mop and clean the store and organize the books. They have a lot of pride in it.
Any other ways that you're engaging the community in Takoma Park? You mentioned quite a few, but anything else?
Yeah, whatever we can do. So we're a member of the Old Town Business Association, which then links us up with other community groups. That group is sort of the Main Street Takoma organization, and it's a 1-employee organization. She's our next door neighbor, Laura Barclay, and the events that they put on in Takoma Park are huge for us. Yeah.
The street festival and Pajamarama were by far our top book selling days, sales days for sure.
Last Sunday was Pajamarama, where everybody puts pajamas on from 8 to 11 a.m. Neither was
you might be the only one in Takoma Park, because I think every other person came to our store on Saturday.
We had no idea how popular it was going to be, and
we were wildly understaffed.
We rang double what we typically ring on a Sunday, so it was our best selling day since we opened. We're also involved with a charity called Small Things Matter, which is hyper local. They give out toys and food and jackets all throughout town. But they're specifically focused on Takoma Park and surrounding areas, particularly on immigrant communities. And so we give them books, We had a book drive for them here. We're a drop-off site for the DC Diaper Bank.
Okay.
So there's a box outside, and every other week Megan or I drop off a few hundred diapers at the diaper bank. What else? We've been doing book drives for schools. So like our daycare, along with Piney Branch, Megan already mentioned, Takoma Children's School, will basically open the shop to those. We'll invite people in for a couple hours, buy pizza for all the kids, and then have a box where people can buy books and donate to the school. Obviously great business for us, but also nice for the school, and a way for us to get people in the door.
This is not super local, but we have some banned book drives happening. During Banned Books Week. We sent a box of donated books. People came in and bought a banned book, put it in a box, and we sent it down to Florida, to Sarasota. They have a bookmobile for distribution. And that was just a really good business for us, and also a really good cause. So we were like, why are we just doing this during 1 week? This is a continuous problem across the country. So we have another box right now, and we're partnering with the Texas Freedom Network. Is that what it's called? They're based in Austin, and they do a similar distribution. So we're just going to have that year round. I mean, it's not a 1 week problem. So if someone wants to donate a book,
that's an issue in 2023.
It's crazy.
It's
Absolutely crazy. Most of the books on our shelves are banned, probably because they're just good books.
Yeah, people are like, where are the books that are banned in Texas? And I'm like, the young adult section.
Yes, everything in the young adult sections. We're underwriters of the community radio next door.
Yeah, so if you're there's a radio station next door, 94.3 FM, where I'm a DJ actually on every other Monday night. 30 watts of power. If you listen to it every now and then, they do an underwriting spot for us. I've been on both of the talk shows that exist over there talking about the store.
Okay, final question, and thanks so much for your time. This has been great. What have you learned about bookselling and or publishing that you wish you knew before you started the store? Which I know hasn't been that long ago, but anything that like completely surprised you that you wish you knew beforehand?
What have we screwed up?
A lot, probably. You know, one thing that's taking up more time than I thought would take is damaged books.
Okay.
And that's not something I kind of thought maybe like every once in a while a book would have a little tear on the top, but that's taken up a ton of our booksellers' time. Is almost every shipment, especially in during the holidays when things are just moving out of the warehouse quickly. There's just stacks of damages of just like bent covers and ripped covers, and that just it takes a lot of time to process the damage. It takes time to get it reshipped. So when a bestseller is damaged, it's really frustrating to have to wait an extra week for it to come in.
And what's crazy to me is some publishers have figured out, oh, that's bad for business. We ought to invest some money and time into training people to properly pack books. So like Ingram never sends us damages for the most part. A lot of the Ingram stuff is clean. It's plastic wrapped before it gets here, and it's tight together so it can't all junk around. Macmillan sent me a box the other day that was this tall and just had books thrown in it in no particular order that had just been shaken around for the last 3 days, and they were all damaged. And it's crazy to me that no one has figured out, like, hey, that's not, we just lost a couple $100 because we didn't spend $15 of a guy's time to pack this properly.
I think some of the bigger ones, I think have gone to like automated, shelving systems. It's done by a robot, so that's probably.
And I think you were asking about publisher relationships. That's honestly been a pretty big part of. Norton is an example of a smaller than Penguin publisher, and they do a really good job with their packaging, and their customer service is really great. And so I buy a lot more books from Norton because I know I'm not going to have to send it back because they're damaged. And so that's another reason to take a risk with the smaller publishers if they have good customer service, good packaging, prompt with delivery.
I'd say the other part that's outside of publishing and bookselling is just a retail operation has lots of unpleasant surprises that we just weren't ready for, right? So we inherited a space that needed a lot of improvements before we could open it and have it not be a toxic waste site, right? And that costs a lot of money, and that costs a lot of time, and everything takes longer than you think. I'm in an ongoing battle with property management company about trash collection. You know,
Yeah, that's a huge thing. You get a lot of boxes when you sell books. It's a lot of trash and a lot of recycling.
Stuff like that is just things you don't, how you run payroll, making sure you're paying your taxes at the right period, running QuickBooks and running accounting and all these things. 10% of what I do in this operation has anything to do with books. It's mostly, hey, the toilet's broken, there's a leak in the ceiling, or the trash hasn't been picked up, or it's the first of the month and we gotta pay bills.
The other thing I think we kind of knew but has been reinforced after 6 months is in terms of hiring. We had so many applicants. We had probably 80 people apply to be for 2 bookselling positions when we opened. I think now we have 8 employees. We definitely learned that we needed a bigger staff pretty quickly, but I think we kind of knew that it was a very customer service, retail, people-facing role. But I think bookselling attracts a lot of people who love books. And it's nice to remember that is very, very important. But I think what's more important is, and our staff is wonderful at this, talking to people and dealing with the clogged toilet. And it's a very customer-facing, customer service role as a bookseller. And I think that's sometimes overlooked because you could know about every single book in the store, but if you're not good at pitching a book and talking to someone and unclogging the toilet, then it's not probably going to work for you.
Or just the ability to make small talk.
It's a lot of small talk in a bookstore.
Hey, when somebody walks in the door, what do you say to them?
Yeah, when I walked in, Jacob, I think his name is, he approached me.
Our booksellers are amazing.
It's a learned skill, though. It's not something that everybody has, particularly people who got stuck on Zoom for the second part of their college education.
Thanks for this conversation. If any of you are local or visiting DC, come visit People's Book in Takoma Park.
Someone will greet you at the door.